Hello, this is Mindy from the Weekend Gardener, and today I'm going to show you how to do worm composting. Worms actually produce a fertilizer called worm castings. It doesn't smell, can be used in the indoors, and can be used outside. It takes 3 to 6 months for you to get your first worm castings. So we're going to begin. The first thing you need is you need a 10-gallon container that has a snap-on lid. I'm actually using a much smaller container, miniaturized version of what you need to do. The next thing you need to do is you need to drill holes, 20 holes in the lid of your container that are 1/4 of an inch in diameter. Then you also need to drill holes along the sides. Now some people actually drill holes in the bottom of the container. If you don't want to put your worm composter on a tray to collect moisture, do not drill holes in the bottom of the container. The next thing that you'll need to do is you will need to tape window screen, or what I have used is landscape cloth. Now the purpose of this is to keep your worms from wiggling out of the holes. Some people actually use vent covers that you can get at a hardware store, and they push them through the holes, but I like to use just what I have around the yard or the garden. So as you can see, I have my holes drilled in here. After you drill your hose, you need to thoroughly rinse and clean the container to prevent any plastic shavings from getting in the bedding. The next step is you will need to tape either your window screen or your landscape cloth to the inside of your container. Now what I've done, I've only used one piece of duct tape because the bedding and the soil will help hold the landscape cloth down. Worms need at least 3 inches of bedding material. Now bedding material can be newspaper, it can be cardboard, it can actually be dried leaves, it can be junk mail. The only thing you don't want to use is the shiny paper that coupons or magazines are printed on. So what you need to do, you need to soak your bedding material. It needs to be shredded. If you don't have a shredder at home, you can just use a pair of scissors, cut the bedding into strips. You need to soak it overnight. Once that is done, you need to squeeze out as much moisture as you possibly can out of the bedding material. Now I'm not going to fill this whole container with the bedding material. I'm just going to give you an example of what you need to do. And you need to spread out the bedding material. The next thing you need to do is you need to add some soil. Some nice garden soil that has good bacteria in it that will help the worms digest the kitchen scraps. Now for worm composting, you do not want to use your typical garden worms or your earthworms. You actually want to use red wiggler worms. What these worms do is they're actually from the tropics, and they live on the top of the leaf litter, and they decompose plant material versus burying themselves down in the ground and aerating the soil. So this is some examples of red wiggler worms, and they are stored in coffee grounds. So you're going to put your worms in there. You can put them on the surface or however you want to do it. They will actually bury themselves down there. And my worms are pretty much inactive because I've been keeping them in the refrigerator. Now things that you can feed your worms. You can feed them coffee grounds. You can feed them apples. You can feed them spent vegetables. Things you don't want to feed them is citrus rind. They also need eggshells once a week, but the eggshells need to be dried and crushed. It helps them create the shell for the eggs that they lay. Now the trick to feeding them is the material needs to be diced up very finely, or you can freeze it, take it out of the freezer, and thaw it before you put it in. So I'm just going to cut this up a little bit. You need to bury your kitchen scraps in the bedding material. This will keep you from getting fruit flies. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about worm composting, and I hope you give it a try. So until we meet in the garden again, this has been Mindy from the Weekend Gardener.